Good evening and welcome to Ask the Ministers. This evening we're going to be talking about health, education, environment and identity, as well as any other topics you want to bring up. We're joined by 5 ministers and members of the Jersey Youth Parliament live in the audience. We've plenty to discuss over the next 90 minutes, so it's over to you to decide what you want to ask the ministers. Good evening again. I'm Jennifer Carnegie, President of the Jersey Chamber of Commerce. On tonight's panel, we have Gregory Guida, Deputy of St Lawrence and Minister for Home Affairs, Assistant Minister for the Environment. Carolyn Labby, Deputy of Grouville, Minister for International Development and Assistant Chief Minister. Scott Wickenden, Deputy of St Helier No. 1, Minister for Children and Education and Assistant Chief Minister. Richard Renouf, Deputy of St Juan, Minister for Health and Social Services, and joining us on screen will be Trevor Poynton, Deputy of St John, Assistant Minister for Health and Social Services, Assistant Minister for Children and Education. And from the Jersey Youth Parliament, they're going to be hosted this evening by Emily and Lucas. So welcome to our panel, to our audience here in the studio, it's great to see you, and to all of you at home, of course. It is worth mentioning, given the rising COVID numbers, that we've taken all of the necessary precautions in the studio this evening, with social distancing, lateral flow testing for everyone, temperature checks at the door, and the audience are all wearing face masks. We'll be taking questions from the floor, but do join in the conversation at home using slido.com, which is on your screen throughout, and use the hashtag AskTheMinisters and then type in your question. If you like the look of a question that's already there, you can promote it by giving it a thumbs up. To get the ball rolling, I'm going to put the first 2 or 3 questions to the panel. Deputy Guida, given the recent issues that we've been having in France, and that's where the bulk of our energy comes from, what are we doing about energy security and resilience to make sure that the lights don't go out?
Well, first, I think the issues have been a little bit exaggerated. It's reasonably unlikely for the French to affect our power supply at all. We're talking about a publicly listed company having a contract with another publicly listed company from a different country, so it's not something that you can affect very easily, even for a government. The second thing, of course, is that it's only been reasonably recently that we've purchased all of our electricity from France. Before that, we used to generate it ourselves, and this tool still exists. We still have the generators, and we just need to put petrol into them, and we can generate the vast majority of our electricity. The last thing, of course, is that this touches our long-term energy supplies, and this is a much wider question that we can look at in terms of environment and sustainability.
So how confident are you that the lights won't go out?
100%.
100%. Okay,
We're
thank
protected
you.
on many aspects.
Deputy Wickenden, if I can come to you now. Business in Jersey has been well supported throughout the pandemic by the government, but we now have to rebuild our post-COVID economy and attract the right talent and skills. What are we doing about that?
So it's not just about attracting skills in Ireland. We need to make sure that we have a skilled workforce that's suitable for the economy that we have. And that's about making sure that we have the right education system for all life learning, so lifelong learning. So we've got Highlands College, we're doing catering courses, and it's dealing with the industry in Jersey to find out what they require to make sure that the children and people changing their vocation and their job have the right ability to get the skills they need to go and boost and work in our economy.
Is there anything that's keeping you up at night about skills and talent on the island?
I'd say we're doing a big piece of work right now called the retraining strategy, which is looking at this very issue, which is going out to industry and asking them about where the skills gaps are, so that we can build the courses that we need and make them available at Highlands and at Holier, and also with our trackers and apprentice scheme about how that looks to make sure that we're doing it. So the work is ongoing. We've got a very successful apprentice scheme already. We had 200 students with a 96% pass rate in the last 2 years, which we should be very proud of.
Fantastic, thank you. Health Minister, if I can come to you now on the subject of skills and filling jobs. The largest increase in jobs in Jersey has been in the health sector. That's going to continue to grow, new hospital, ageing population. What are we doing to make sure that we've got the right talent in the health jobs and making sure that we've got the right people here on island to service the community?
Yes, it's an important issue because the greatest need is for carers who will go into people's homes and help people to live independently in their home for as long as they can. We call those domiciliary care workers. And you may have seen in the media, we've launched a campaign recently, and our aim is to try to recruit at least 100 new domiciliary care workers to come and join the firms in the island who are offering that service. And this is something that all the firms have got behind together with government, and we're really making a push, a sustained push for at least 6 months to build that campaign and try and get those people in, and also to train up to a higher level the people already in the industry.
And are you looking, to get those people in, are you looking on island for that talent?
Yes, it's an on-island campaign.
Okay, and have you seen any signs of the level of take-up?
Yes, there has been some take-up, there has been some interest shown, and even some people come forward to talk about training, to seek out a position. But it's a longer term. We're going to be working and ramping up that campaign as the months go on. Okay,
thank you. Deputy Labby, overseas aid, what's it for, and are we giving enough overseas aid?
Well, that's $1 million question, but if I could start by saying we have 1 billion people in the world who are malnourished, 2 billion people who don't have access to healthcare, to sanitation, and 5 million children die before their 5th birthday. So are we giving enough? Well, you'll have to think about that one. But
how much do we give?
Our current budget is 12.43 million, which works out, overseas development aid is usually measured in GDP, against GDP or GVA. And our contribution is 0.26%.
That's quite low though, isn't it, for a Western country?
We're working towards the OECD average, which is 0.31. What I have done in the last couple of years is reverse the decline, which I felt was embarrassing for an international community such as ours. So we've reversed the decline, and what we've actually done is fix our budget to GVA, GDP, and agreed, well, we've got to agree it in the government plan, which we're debating in December, a small increase year on year to get us to the OECD average.
Okay, thank you. If you've just joined us, don't forget you can ask your questions on slido.com, #AskTheMinisters. In the meantime, we've got a fantastic addition to the panel today of the Jersey Youth Parliament in the audience. I'd like to hand over to Emily now. They've got some questions for you.
Thank you, Jennifer. First off, I want to ask a question about the political system. This question is from First Tower and Prince's Trust. So what is a politician, and what is your favourite part of your job?
Deputy Labby, you want to take that one?
A politician is somebody that debates things in our parliament and makes decisions for the community. That's the main part of our job. However, there's lots of other aspects to it, and I enjoy it because in the morning I get up and every single day is different. So as I'm deputy of Grouville, sometimes I'm working with constituents in Grouville. I hold parish surgeries. I chair Jersey Overseas Aid, so I might go into the office and make decisions there. I also chair the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association Jersey branch, and I sit in the island's government and make decisions as we've been doing today.
Thank you. Next up, I want to ask Jemima if she wants to ask a question about the issues affecting young people in Jersey. This question is from Le Roquier School.
There's little to do in Jersey for young people. What is and can be done about this?
Deputy Wickenden, one for you, I think.
Okay, so there is a lot less to do than when I was a young boy many years ago. We're looking at things about sports. We're putting a lot more money into things like trying to build the skate park and trying to create things to do outside of school. There is a lot of money in the government plan for creating new facilities, be it through the sports, through regenerating Fort Regent and making sure that there's areas to do up there. So I do accept that that there's little to do, but within this government plan and within this government we have been trying to put money in and programmes in to start building on the facilities that to give more opportunities to have things to do for children in the island.
Can I just ask, not every child likes sports on the island, so what are you doing to help the children that don't like sports? There's a lot about the skate parks, but also not every child knows how to skate or wants to learn to skate. So I think, do you have any other things that you're doing? There's a lot about skate parks, but is there anything else?
Can I push back and ask, what would you like to see?
Different clubs that we don't have on offer. There's a lot, especially in my year, there's a lot about chess and lots of games that there's a magic club and loads of magic shops that were open. A lot of them are closing down now. So I think a lot of things are alternatives to sports. I mean, I'm a very sporty person, but I think things like the youth parliament work because it interacts people, but you need more things like that.
Yeah, so it's more to do with, we've got the youth parliament, the Jersey Youth that does a really amazing job at setting up youth centres and having things for children to do, and we fully support what's going on there. It's about letting us know what you would like to see more and how we can facilitate it in the facilities we have. We're looking at building new schools within St Helier that we're going to have more facilities to be working outside of school time, so those facilities can be used within the community, and that's part of the programme that we're looking at the moment, as well as other vocational stuff that we're doing across the schools.
Can I ask in that question, you're interested in young people's views. How do you gather those views?
So we do have a survey that goes out year on year that asks about what the challenges that are affecting children. I guess I'm going around schools at the moment, as many as I can, to talk to children, to ask them what they would like to see more, certainly within their schools and around. I've been to see the Youth Parliament, and you grilled me for 2 hours on many subjects. I think it was last week. I'm trying to get around personally to actually talk directly to children to find out their views. So that's what I've been doing since I've been in post.
Do you think, as young people, that your voices are being heard enough?
I think if the Youth Parliament wasn't formed, they wouldn't be heard as much, but I think by forming it, it has already made an impact, and we get our views across and our friends can get their views across from us, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Jemima, what do you think?
I think definitely that the Youth Parliament helps because there's school councils and stuff, but not everyone is involved and they're all school focused and not island focused, so not much impact is made.
I'd certainly say that since we had the youth assembly in the Parliament and you spoke to me and I heard what you had to say, that's when I brought my officers to talk about the curriculum to you directly to have that word. So I think it's had a real impact, and I'm really pleased for hearing your voices and hearing what you got to say.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks,
Jemima.
Jemima.
Thanks, Jemima.
Okay, next up I want to ask Faith to come up and ask a question about global issues and environment.
With the increasing number of channel crossings, are the ministers planning to review their stance on the refugee crisis and support for the refugees.
Channel crossings. Deputy Gita, one for you.
I'm not sure I can. Well, sorry. My link to this is through immigration, and of course, immigration doesn't help very much for that. There are international laws that mean that if a country receives people asking for asylum, sorry, if I was looking for asylum, you need to process them, and there are some good and bad reasons for seeking asylum, we can do that. If refugees landed in Jersey, we would be able to do that. But you may have heard that we have a small problem with the housing crisis, so Jersey is really not a good place for anybody to land.
Are you saying we have a housing crisis?
We may have a housing crisis, yes. It all depends on what you call crisis. It's semantics.
Deputy Labby, can I bring you in on this question as well, in terms of immigration and channel crossings?
Yeah, sure. I've actually visited the refugee camps in Zaatari and Lebanon, and the people there were predominantly Syrian, and without exception, when we asked them would they like to, where would they like to be? Would they like to come to Britain? Would they like to go back home? Where do they want to be? And without exception, they all wanted to go home, and they felt by being where they were, they had a better chance of going back home as soon as the troubles were over. However, it is most certainly an issue, and you know, the people that make those harrowing crossings across the Channel and indeed the Mediterranean are extremely desperate people. But I think the issue is if refugees come here, they've got to be treated exactly the same as if they are in Britain. So therefore they've got to be housed, they've got to be given housing, and they have got to be given the same benefits as what they'd get in the UK. Now the UK is far more geared up for this than we are. They have settlements of people. So it's a judgment call, really. It's, you know, can the island take more people? Yeah, I mean, we looked at it a few years ago to see if we could sort of take 30 or so people, perhaps. But we can't pick and choose. They can't be children. They can't, you know, and they are subject to everything. They're entitled to everything that they get in the UK.
So what do you think about that, hearing that?
How you said about they just want to go home, but they don't really have much of a home to go back to if it's full of war. So they could be there for years if that's the mindset that different governments have. And as you said, with the channel crossings, up to 24 people died today, just crossing the channel.
Yeah. And there's 100,000 people in the Zaatari camp. That's just one camp, for example. So it's a judgment call. If the people of Jersey feel that we can take them in, we can house them, we can give them the benefits and educate them.
Isn't that a slippery slope, though? Once you have one or two, the families come over, and you know, we've only got a limited amount of space on the island. How do you manage that? We're struggling to manage our population as it is.
Well, that's it. And as far as overseas aid goes, my budget is to be given overseas, and we feel that giving aid closer to home to ensure that in the camps, and certainly we do work in Syria, in Lebanon, in their homes, so that they've got homes to go back to. So we feel that my budget is best served nearer to their homes and in their homes.
Thank you. We've got time for one more audience question at this point. Emily?
Thank you, Faith. Lastly, I've got a question from Princess Trust. I just want to ask, how do you plan on lowering dependency on cars in the island?
Yeah.
I'll do that one. Well, we're trying to do a few things because of our aim to reach carbon neutrality by 2030 and zero emissions by 2050. Transport is extremely important. One of the aspects is trying to change the existing cars to electric, but also to try to push people to use public transport as much as possible, and also healthy commuting, so more walking, more cycling. And that's actually the funny thing about this is that cycling is probably the most expensive of all, because you want more cycle lanes, and because land is difficult to get by in Jersey, opening up a cycle lane is more expensive than having a new bus route or buying hundreds of electric cars. But we're working on all three aspects to try to reduce carbon emission and traffic in general.
Just on the subject of environment, we know that behaviour changes when money is invested. What are we doing to make sure that there's the right amount of grants and the right funding of initiatives to encourage people to change what they do?
Well, this government started pretty well by creating a fund, the Climate Emergency Fund, that was funded with an initial amount of money, but also given part of the fuel tax. So this fund kept growing, and over the 4 years, starting from this one, we will have £23 million to spend on the subject. So we're already ready to spend money, create incentives, and make sure that people convert to to zero emission as soon as possible.
Do you think there's enough being done, or do you think we should be doing more environmentally?
Does anyone in the audience have an answer to that? Ollie, do you want to comment?
I would say that it's all well and good with these. I mean, obviously, cycle lanes, things like that, detailed. You're not going to go through all that. We're going to put it in St Helier. Yes, I know. That sort of thing. But I would say the main thing is that Jersey has a lot of natural resources that we can pull on as well. I understand that we buy a lot of our energy from France, but even the island planning people, they said that we could put a grid in the sort of southern sea for things like that and sort of sell that energy to France so we don't have to buy it off them straight off. It's sort of like a trade. I mean, that's just one example, of course, but there's sort of precautions like that, or sort of very, very, I don't know, the best sort of way of describing it is like far out ideas. Yeah.
It's an interesting one because I was just asked about our energy security, and probably the easiest way to both create green energy and have energy security is from having a wind farm that would belong to Jersey. It's complex because there's not always wind. You need a constant electricity supply, and a viable wind farm is actually larger than our needs. But it's something that we could do with Guernsey, and that we would have to do with France. It's a very interesting concept, but there's a lot of work to do behind it.
Brilliant. And the other thing is a lot of plastic waste. Parishes like, I think St One don't have recycling. You're the deputy of St One.
We've just voted.
Oh, brilliant,
Household
brilliant.
recycling.
There you go.
It's happening from January.
Brilliant. Well, there you go. But sort of with the generator, are there other things that we can do about separating non-recyclables from recyclables, or is that a very difficult process?
The problem with recyclables is the market for them. So how much does it cost? And it's just not money. Usually there's a very, very simple link between money and energy. So if a recyclable actually stops bringing you money but actually costs to recycle, it usually means that it costs more energy to get rid of or to reuse than it costs more energy to reuse than get rid of. So these are the problems we have, and it's not just us, it's the whole world with recycling. There are some things that can be easily recycled and that should be recycled, but also there's a lot of work ahead of that on the type of products that we use. So for example, we don't really need to make packaging out of plastics, out of fossil fuel derived plastics. We can use organic plant-based plastics instead. So it's sort of things that we should try to push. And I'd like, that's a fantastic way of coming to my principal question. This is not really in the hands of the government. This is in the hand of the people. if when you buy something in a supermarket, you insist that it's less packaged. I mean,
I think we can pick that point up later
Okay.
on. I think we're going to cut to a short video now, and then we've got lots and lots of Slido questions that need answering.
I can't wait to travel to the UK and see my friends and family, and the vaccine allows me to do that.
Hey guys, my name's Grace. I work at the vaccination centre as a marshal. This is our clinical lead.
Welcome to the vaccination centre.
I'm Neil Sontake and I'm 14. I haven't had the vaccine yet, but I'm looking forward to walking in at Fort Regent on Saturday and Bag.
Hi, my name is Tyler. I'm going to be getting my vaccine later on today, and I'm doing this to protect you and my family. And any advice that I have to give is that you should be doing this for the community and for the people, not for yourself.
Are you 12 to 15 and worried about the COVID vaccine? If so, tune in tonight to the government's Facebook for Ask the Experts.
Hi, I'm Will Overland, I'm 12 years old and I've had my COVID vaccine. I wanted to get the vaccine because I don't want to catch COVID. I also want to protect some of my relatives who could be vulnerable. My mum told me something which is short-term pain, long-term protection.
Saying some people get COVID, therefore the vaccine doesn't work, is just like saying next time Hope Valley play a football match, we're not going to have a goalkeeper. Because last time we had a goalkeeper, but we let a goal in, therefore goalkeepers don't work. Well, if you didn't have a goalie, you'll have let 10 or 11 in, and Granville or whoever will be crowing. And I think it's a very simple analogy. As Dr. Muscat said, vaccines aren't perfect.
Welcome back. Health Minister, if I can ask you in terms of COVID, the issue is changing from it's being much more about disruption now that is being caused on the island rather than the severity of infections because so many of our population have been vaccinated. What are the plans, particularly in schools, to get us through Christmas?
Well, I'm very pleased that today we've been able to announce that if you're identified as a direct contact in schools, you won't need to take a PCR test. That goes for staff and students. Instead, you'll be asked to take an LFT test because they are reliable enough. So that avoids a lot of the disruption that I know has been caused by sending people off to the harbour. And I know that's happened several times, you know, every other day or so. And I can see how that disruptive that was. So schools, there's that different regime that's now been established after much thought, and that's a safe way of still monitoring and keeping control of the spread of COVID in schools.
I think it's still necessary to report the numbers in the way that we do because we don't have a context, for instance, of how many people are normally hospitalised during the winter with flu.
Yes, I know people do ask this. Everywhere in the world is reporting its numbers. If we stopped reporting numbers, people would say that we are hiding things. So we're still reporting the numbers, but we are saying that it's not the number itself, the number of new cases in the island that is significant. It's about how many people are in hospital. If we see those numbers going into hospital growing, then we may well have a problem because it's essential to keep our health service and essential services running and not be overwhelmed. But we'll still report the numbers. It's work that needs to be done because COVID is not the same as flu, which we don't report on numbers yet. One day it will become, but at the moment it's still something that can cause us problems. So we will still monitor it, and therefore we can report the numbers.
Thank you. Okay, we've got lots and lots of questions coming in on Slido. So the first one, I think, Trevor, Deputy Poynton, we've got you on screen. If I can ask this to you and maybe the Health Minister as well. Why did the Government of Jersey make the decision to stop referring young people to Hope House? How can we learn from the mistakes here to provide inpatient mental health care for young people in Jersey? Deputy Poynton, if I can come to you first, please.
Yeah, but if I may, I'd like to go back to a question from earlier. The question was about traffic density, pollution, and the effects on people's health. And the fact of the matter is that there are options to keep traffic out of the town and in the parishes where people do need to use their car for short journeys. And it has been a constant problem persuading the infrastructure minister to introduce a system of park and ride so that people can park their cars not in the town but in the parishes, and to be brought into the parishes by bus, which would reduce the congestion we have and the majority of pollution that is caused by the density of traffic on the roads.
Thank you, thank you.
Finishing there, I'll come to the question, the question at hand. Hope House is not a matter for health. Hope House is a matter for education and the CAMS and social work services, children's social work services. Hope House set up a facility that had very, very defined parameters, and they registered their service with the Care Commission within those very defined parameters. Unfortunately, although there were one or two people referred by individual social workers initially, because they had addiction problems and problems of that description, the need within children's social services and within CAMS was proven to be outside the provision that Hope House could provide. And we have subsequently not been able to send a number of referrals that they anticipated that they might receive from us.
So Deputy Wickenden, do you accept that it's at your feet?
So this sits within my remit, absolutely, yeah. So I can firstly say we have at no point made a decision, or there's been no decision to not refer children to Hope House. Children have records of needs and they have care plans set around them. If that record of need in that care plan would have set out that the 28-day therapeutic care within Hope House would have been a benefit to that child, they would have been referred to Hope House. There was never a policy decision to exclude Hope House. It was about what was in the best need through the psychiatrists and social workers and care workers for that child that assess the needs of that child about what's the best course of support for that child. Unfortunately, we didn't have a child that was assessed in the way that the 28-day care that Hope House would have done would have been of benefit, because there was much more complex needs for the children that was more around that. So it was unfortunate, I couldn't just fill Hope House with children that weren't a record of need around them. It had to be what's for the best for those children, and we just didn't have the children to put into there, and I couldn't put them in there if they didn't need to be there.
Okay. The next question that we've got on Slido is also about education. So Deputy Wickenden, I'll stick with you. Yeah. Why are there not more vocational opportunities for students at age 14?
It's a very open question. So there's plenty of vocational opportunities across schools. It depends, I guess, in sometimes which schools you're in, depends on what vocational trainings are available. One thing we have done in the government plan is we've obviously been aware that with schools closing down during COVID, that there's been a reduction in education for children. So we're putting in money to set up more vocational courses throughout next year, throughout the summer holidays. So it's a piece of work that we're doing. The Youth Parliament came and talked to the curriculum or the head of the curriculum council, and some of the subjects we talked about, how we're looking at the curriculum right now and how we can make it modern, better, and give the kind of curriculum that you want.
Deputy Labby, do you have any comments on how we make the best for youngsters on the island?
Well, I'm doing an island identity project. I don't know if you've come across it. I'm really hoping that the Youth Parliament will take it up as a topic to explore, possibly in January in the following term.
We're going to be showing a video about that very shortly.
Yeah, okay, so I won't talk about that too much now. If I would say that on overseas aid, we do offer some opportunities, some placements and bursaries, and we work with trackers to give young people the opportunity to work on our community work projects when we're allowed to travel, of course.
Okay, thank you. So more questions on Slido here. The average duration of a criminal investigation in Jersey over the past 5 years was 36 days. How is it acceptable that the Norfolk police investigation into the state's planning department has been allowed to go on for 3.5 years, which is 876 working days, without any meaningful update? What is being done?
First of all, we do not have access to investigations while they're happening. So it's not something that actually I get informed about, and certainly not something I can tell the public or the rest of the government. The second thing is that the average figure really is an average. It's not about if you have an investigation, it's going to take 30 days. Some investigations will take a few hours, and some investigations will take years. An investigation of that class will normally take about 2 years. That's not abnormal for it. You have to add to that, of course, that COVID happened in the meantime, and that it was done by a foreign force, which had to travel. So COVID was actually quite significant for them when they had to travel. It completely disrupted the investigation. Also, and I'm quite surprised by this, it's almost finished. We are expecting the results any time now. There were several hundred pieces of evidence. I've heard 1,000 pieces of evidence. So that's not something that you're going to improvise and slap a report and just give it. It is actually quite an in-depth investigation. That's the other thing. We asked the foreign force to do it because we wanted them to start from scratch and do it absolutely in depth and make sure that nothing was lost. Okay. So it's normal that it takes a long time. It's had COVID, and it's done from abroad, which makes it even more difficult.
Okay. Health Minister, if I can come back to you. We've touched on this briefly already, but isn't it time to stop testing completely and rely on hospital numbers to gauge the pandemic, and at the very least leave children alone?
No, I don't believe so, unfortunately. We still need to test to try and control the spread of COVID.
But hasn't the population done what was asked? We've been vaccinated, people are getting boosters, we're doing all the lateral flow testing. Do we still need to keep that testing regime?
Well, I mean, COVID still has the ability to cause a lot of harm, both in terms of people's personal health and to society. You've spoken before about the disruption already in schools. So the islanders have been great throughout COVID, and they've responded well and isolated and got vaccinations, and that's been a fantastic response. But unfortunately, we still need to stick together and deal with this because it is an issue. Maybe not as dire as it was a year ago, but it's still got the capacity to cause harm.
So can I go to members of the Youth Parliament now? What do you feel when you hear that? Does that bother you? Lucas? Yeah.
I think the comment "leave children alone" is definitely an issue. I mean, we can't get our second dose of our second vaccination, so I've been waiting for months for my second one. Until I turn 18, I'm not allowed. So, or something like that, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And if you come into the airport and you've only got one vaccination, you have to isolate?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. I told them I've had one, and they still said you have to isolate, which is an issue. I'm in my A-levels. I can't be missing out on school. I've already missed out enough. It's an issue for, island-wide for all children. And for a lot of younger children, you're not symptomatic either. So I completely agree with you with that, with your point. You can't just stop testing. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but it's stupid. it's probably the worst thing you can do at this moment. I mean, COVID's not gone. I think that's a misconception in a lot of people's brains that it's gone. It's not. It's still going, and it's going to go on for a lot longer than we expected. It's just like the wars. You know, the First World War, people thought they were going to be home by Christmas. That didn't happen. It's, you know, this isn't a war. We're not in World War III, but it's still a really big issue.
Thanks, Lucas. Did anybody else in the audience have any comments on that? Emily?
I just want to add on to Lucas's point. The government said that they're going to put children first, and by continuing to test children especially, that's putting children first and making sure our safety is before anyone else's. So, yeah, I agree with.
How long, though, are you happy to put up with, and the way that some people might express it, as having your freedom curtailed?
I think there might be a point where, even though the majority of us are vaccinated, there could be something that happens with a young person, and that young person could die. And I think for us to keep going, it can limit the chances of that young person dying. So if we have to keep going, we're going to have to keep going, because that's a life on the line.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to housing. And we'll be interested in the impact on young people with this too. It's an issue, it's a crisis, as we heard earlier. So with house prices at their highest ever, and the average wage no longer enough to buy a basic studio flat, can the panel not blame young people seeking a life elsewhere? Deputy Wickenden, can I come to you first in terms of young people and you know, what hope is there for them?
What we're looking at the moment, I absolutely agree that the rent prices and buying a property is a real struggle, certainly for young people today. And looking at it, when I was younger, it was one of the things that I thought I might not be able to do as well. Deputy Russell Labby, the Housing Minister, is coming up with a raft of plans to try and kind of see what we can do to increase the amount of housing, make sure that people from outside the island aren't buying up the housing stock and using it to rent out, but there is an important place in renting as well as buying as well, so we need to make sure that's clear. Skills and jobs and making sure that the economy is strong and the wages go up is one thing that we need to continue to do to make sure that everyone's got options. Sometimes leaving the island and going and working elsewhere and getting skills and opportunities elsewhere and then coming back to the island is also a very important part of growing up and life opportunities. But it is absolutely a challenge. I think it's always been a challenge, but particularly now the prices, I know, are ludicrous.
Well, it's £639,000 is the average price of a house. One bedroom flat, you're looking at 350 grand.
I know.
You know, that's a lot of deposit. So how would the panel define a housing crisis? Deputy Gida, can I come to you on that, please?
Yes, we're talking about the semantics of it.
Is it semantics, though?
The definition of crisis is very different according to the people you ask. And also, if you ask somebody who's just sold their two-bedroom flat for £750,000, probably don't think it's a crisis. If you ask the estate agents, it's probably not a crisis.
Well, that's
either.
okay if you're on the housing ladder.
No, absolutely. However, it is a crisis for some people. If you're not on the ladder and you're trying to rent or buy anything from scratch now, you're really in trouble. So there is a massive problem. However, the one solution for it is to build more. And the problem with that, as you well know, is that it takes a little while. So it wasn't done.
And where are we going to build them?
It started. We have plans for 3,000 dwellings in the next 5 years. 3,000, not a few dozen.
And where 3, are you going to build them?
The States has lots of sites available that will all be built. And of course, the island plan has a lot of fields
so
that have been
again,
signed.
Where are you going to build them? Where on the island? Which parishes are we talking about here?
Well, almost every parish will be giving up some fields, some green fields, for housing. And we found several, because we need all sorts. The whole market needs to be replenished so that the prices stabilize, or one hopes go down a little bit. So we need one-bedroom apartments, we need two-bedroom apartments, we need social housing, and we need homes, we need houses.
Do we have room for 3,000 more houses on the
Yes,
island?
well, actually, we have room for 7,000. The whole plan is over 10 years, and we need to build 7,000 houses.
Health Minister,
Homes.
can I bring you in on this?
You know, the rural parishes, I'm Deputy of St. Juan, the rural parishes along the north coast, in the 80s and 90s there were village developments taking place there, and families moved in, and that became a vibrant centre. Youth clubs were established, sports clubs. I remember that time. You know, there was a lot of activity around the parishes. Now, as those families have grown older, you know, there's a risk that those northern parishes can become a sort of dormitory town to St Hellion. That's not what we want. You might find that the youth clubs in St Juan's, I know, have trouble recruiting, and the sports clubs, and the Honorary Police also, because so many people in St Juan's are kind of my age. We need younger people, and I think there's a wish in those parishes to appropriately extend our village centres. And there is land. It's happened before, and then for a few decades there's been nothing. And now we need to repeat that.
Okay, we're going to go back to some audience questions with Lucas now.
So our first question is, what's being done to diversify the State's Assembly and also increase population of younger people in politics?
Deputy Wickington?
Okay, so year on year, I've been through 2 elections now, and I've voted in many, many more of them. My mum used to drag me down to the polling booth by the ear as soon as it was election time and get me voting. There has always been a good mix of male and female candidates and from different backgrounds and jobs and the likes. It's up to the people who then, by being elected, you're elected by the people. They choose which candidate they feel should be in the Assembly. If we were to mandate that so many you have to have so many female candidates, you have to have so many male candidates, there has to be ethnic minority changes. That changes the way that an election will be held. So it's not so much about the people's choice anymore, it's about trying to fit somebody into that area. So it's very difficult to try and say that we do something to diversify. It's about trying to encourage candidates to stand forward. I know the IOD is doing a lot of work right now to try and encourage candidates to stand forward. Young people, we've had young people. It's an amazing job to get involved with politics. It really does change your life once you get involved in it. It's so I would ask any young person, if you're ready, I'd go out and get some life skills first, because you might not get voted in the next time round and you need something to fall back on. But go and do something. This is a really enriching job where you can go and actually really make a difference, and you learn so much about everything that happened to the island. You learn about housing, tax, social security, the environment, education. It is something that's really enriching. So I would say to young people, firstly, go out and have a job and go and get some nice skills and do that. But even as a young person after that, come in and run for politics. It's an amazing thing to do.
Anybody here interested in running for politics?
Go on, Emily.
Emily? Yeah, and what do you think about the need, or what Deputy Wickington is suggesting, that you go and get a job and get some life skills first?
I agree with that completely. I think if you don't have a job first, and if you don't learn about if you don't enjoy your childhood and your youth before you get into politics, I think it's not really worth it in a way. You kind of have to get the experience, because a lot of the time when you're in politics you have to do what's best for everyone, but you won't know what's best for everyone if you've not lived a little and you have the experiences of most of the people that you're working for.
Thanks, Emily. We'll look forward to seeing you in politics in the near future. Lucas, any more questions from the audience?
Yes, so our next question is from Leo from the Youth Parliament. I'm going to hand it over to Ollie to ask this question.
Yeah, Leo asks, what is being done to reduce the waiting times for autism diagnosis among young people?
Deputy Poynton, may I come to you for that question in the first instance?
That would possibly be appropriate, yes. But before I do, I need to go back to, and I've done this to you on the previous question, I need to go back to village development, and it's very serious that we do have a declining population problem in the northern villages, and older people are getting older and younger people are not able to get into the villages. So we need to find an affordability solution. My own personal experience is that my daughter, after 30 years in the island, was forced to leave the island because she could not afford the rent and she could not afford to purchase a property. She is now in a well-paid job and will find a property in the Midlands. But that
so just to that point, Deputy Poynton, what hope is there for normal islanders if the politicians on the island, their own families are having these problems? You know, the politicians surely are in the position to do something about this. Normal islanders.
We have to have some very serious thought and take some very serious actions in relation to the way that we develop property.
And is that happening? Is that happening?
Well, hopefully there are issues in relation to the percentage of affordable housing that is going to be built in new developments, and I think we need to address that. We need to increase the numbers of affordable dwellings that are going to be built in new developments. We need to assess what is an affordable dwelling, because there are so many people who live below the average wage income.
Okay, thank you. Let's come back. Let's come back to the question on waiting times for autism diagnosis, please.
Yes, and I'm happy to address that, because it depends really whether you're talking about autism waiting times within CAMS or within adult mental health services, because the two are currently separated. And I presume, as the question came from young people, that it was about the CAMS waiting times.
Is it about the CAMS waiting time? Yeah, okay.
Because it's
okay, so the CAMS waiting times are currently a real concern, and we are outsourcing assessments for CAMS autism waiting times. It's not just autism, but it's the whole neurodevelopmental service, and there's a lot of money. Well, I say a lot of money in real terms. There is considerable amount of funding going into developing the service in real terms for the next few years, and that is where we have a plan to appoint a significant number of people to posts within the service who are going to be servicing those needs.
Okay.
It's not only neurodevelopmental needs, but it's also the other CAMS services that need to be developed and hyped up.
Okay,
so
thank
that
you.
we can.
Thank you. We've got time for a couple more questions, Lucas, if you have them.
Yes, so what will the new mental health unit be like at the hospital, and how is it going to be an improvement?
Health Minister, you want to take that one?
It will definitely be an improvement. This will be for inpatient services. It will meet modern standards of care. It will be comfortable. There'll be proper facilities for staff as well as patients there. It'll be a secure place. Like the whole of the hospital, it'll be built to modern standards, and both in the building structure but also for the service we want to offer too.
How are you actually going to improve people's mental health? You didn't really address that part of the question.
Oh, sorry. Well, yeah, It's happening, but it's happening from a low base, because for a long time mental health was very much the Cinderella service, I think, and it needs to have a parity of esteem with physical health. So we are building up the service, and there was a time when mental health services were really staffed with a lot of people who were locums or agency staff. Now we've got far fewer of those, and we have people in post who are here permanently because they've accepted those posts, and that helps, that improves the service, because these people are committed to the island and can work together and know that team is established. So there's a lot of challenges in mental health, but and there will be setbacks. We had some bad news recently, but we put that out there because we've taken the decision that we're going to be transparent about how the service is operating.
Are we doing enough?
Oh, I'd always love to do more, but within our budget we are prioritising mental health, and we are finding that staff are coming to Jersey, and we are beginning to train locally as well. We have set up just this year a training programme for mental health nurses.
Okay, thank you.
Our last question is from Cal.
Hi, my name is Cal. I'm from Trinity, and my question is, what are we going to do about all the waste plastics used in the PCR and lateral flow test? And I know we've come onto the topic of recycling before, but I'd like to circle back onto it again.
Okay, well done, Deputy Gida. You were talking about packaging earlier. Now's the
Well,
opportunity.
we seem to be taking good care of our plastics in the island, and they are all incinerated in the energy for waste plant, which takes energy from them, so we recover some of that. Then the ashes are, the smoke and the ashes are filtered and taken care of properly. So they are taken care of well. But I mentioned last time that there were going to be changes in plastics and packaging, and that we should be encouraging them by consuming properly, by making sure that we don't insist on having things that are packaged over the top. Christmas coming is actually quite interesting because it's the time where you cannot buy a snack bar without having it, super wrapped and double wrapped and then in a box and then with a bow and everything. And of course, all of this gets thrown away immediately. As consumers, we need to insist that this doesn't happen, that there's the absolute minimum of packaging.
Do you think there's enough being done on the island to protect the environment?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of work being done, but maybe we could try make more efforts, like maybe a second smaller recycling facility somewhere on the island. Maybe.
Is that feasible? Is it needed?
Yeah, that's a question for the infrastructure minister. I don't think it's necessary. I think we are not large enough to have several places for recycling, and also it's a very short trip. So, when you throw away things in Saint Juan, within 30 minutes they will be in La Colette and being taken care of. So it's not really necessary to have recycling posts elsewhere in the island.
Jennifer, it's these things that are the problem, I think. And,
Yep.
in schools,
Suppose you
how
keep
do you
making us
dispose
wear
of these
them.
things in schools, can I ask?
We have to wear them in the corridors. We don't have to wear them in classes. In communal areas, we also have to wear them. And then obviously sanitizing, wiping down desks and stuff like that.
Sure. Do people throw them away on the ground? Because I see them on pavements and they're going to get washed into the drains and then out into the sea. And so is there a means of disposing of used masks in schools?
I guess it would just be in the bin.
Yeah, which is fair enough, and then it gets burnt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at Holia, and I know the teachers are very, very strict on wearing masks. They'll pull you aside. They won't let you leave your area until you've put that mask on. If you don't have one, there's some at reception. And we don't see any around school on the floor. I don't know if that's because people pick them up, but I've never seen any around school.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much for the questions. We're going to go to a short video now on island identity, and don't forget to put your questions on Slido.
Of the 3 Crown dependencies, Jersey has the biggest population and the largest economy. We used to have a reputation as the feistiest one, the one that really cared about preserving and enhancing the island's autonomy.
There's a recognition of the importance of the soft power of heritage, culture, language and identity in projecting Jersey on an international stage.
In some ways, it's our responsibility to lead the way.
Set out to define Jersey's identity, how we see ourselves and how others see us, recognising what makes us special so we can protect, nurture and promote it.
Whether you've recently arrived in Jersey or can trace your family back over many generations, all of us who love this island know that we are part of a special and unique place, but one that cannot be taken for granted.
The people, they go beyond to help each other.
You just walk into a shop, you walk down the street and people are like, hello. In the beginning I was just taken aback.
What makes Jersey really distinct is the multicultural society we have. My mum is from Madeira and my dad is from Portugal mainland, and they met over here. The sense of community that everyone has, the music and the food, even my English friends coming down and appreciating our culture, food and music always brings people together.
We've got the Jersey Royals and we've got the Jersey Cow, so preserving them is a main thing.
I'm very passionate about farming in Jersey, have been now for 30 years. We need to be encouraging more younger farmers into the industry. Government has a part to play in that.
One day I'd like to have my own farm, lots of animals, and I'd be very busy.
Tourists will always say the fish is great. We have to work so much harder, as opposed to our French colleagues, to the English boats, to get the same amount of money.
We need to look into making Jersey an all-year-round destination.
There are good initiatives, like the fact that we've been providing milk cows to Rwanda. Lots of good things we can do to strike a subtly different pose from this rich man's hideaway, tuck your money in Jersey, no questions asked, which I'm afraid isn't fair, but it's a reputation that casts a long shadow.
Hopefully in 10 years' time, Jersey will be perceived in quite a different way, with sort of moral conscience at the heart of everything that the government does and the people do.
The younger generation are born into the digital age now.
Jersey is highly connected. There's a lot of support for new business and digital growth.
Digital provides new opportunities to give Jersey a new identity.
Making digital work for the sectors that are already highly successful here.
Sport in Jersey is huge. So you've got your rugby, your football, your boxing.
Surfing, sailing, hobie catting, kayaking, they're all part of our DNA.
We've brought out some amazing athletes in such a small island.
Every time we put on the jersey, always a proud moment.
The amount of support is massive, and it shows what that means to the community within Jersey.
You don't have to be a #1 athlete to actually enjoy sport.
Sport can provide the foundations for a lot of great characteristics.
It helps people find their own identity.
Jersey is defined by its culture, history and environment, but most of all by its people. Join the debate. What does Jersey mean to you?
I hope that everyone who feels the privilege of living in this island will engage in the conversation about what it means to be a part of this community. We can be proud of our island and maintain it for future generations.
Welcome back. Deputy Labby, what are the strategic aims of identifying an island identity, and where are we on that journey?
Right, so this project was put together by the Policy Development Board, which was a board of voluntary members, and we put together a 200-page document which looked into various aspects of our identity. We considered the constitution, arts, heritage, our international personality, various aspects like that. And then we came up with a consultation document, which is this: what does Jersey mean to you? I don't know if the audience have come across it at all. But again, it breaks it down into easier chapters. And we're asking you the question. What government are trying to do is we're posing a couple of questions. What does Jersey mean to you? and how do we see ourselves, and how do we want others to see us? Because we feel this is a really important time to be asking these questions. The stronger our national identity is, the better we can position ourselves in the changing world. We've got to re-establish relationships with the UK post-Brexit. We've got climate change to consider. We've got hopefully post-pandemic. We've got technological changes. And we feel it's really important to position ourselves in the world and to go out there with a strong identity. And what government are trying to do is collate all the information. As Scott asked you earlier, what do you want to see in the island? What do you want to do?
Can I ask, sorry to interrupt you, can I ask, do you understand what the project is, the Island Identity Project is, from what Deputy Labby has said? Do you get it?
I do, yeah. I think it's a great project, but that's also because I did my Trident at the States. So I mean, I was working with your assistant. I can't remember her name. I'm really sorry, but yeah. So I mean, but I think it's a really great project, and bringing it into schools would be really great as well. Because especially with Youth Parliament, we do a lot of with life skills. One of our subgroups, we do a lot of PSHE curriculum editing, as Deputy Scott Whitcomb will know. And it'd be great to sort of work with your team, with our team, and sort of see what we can do about that. But I think it's a great project. But yeah.
I think thank you. There's a question on Slido which I think might be helpful for people to understand. Why does the government think that it has any business trying to define my identity? How much money will be wasted on this irrelevant project before it begins to gather dust?
Oh, well, I'll thank the questioner for that question. We're not trying to impose an identity on anyone, which is why we're asking the question. But what is important, what people have tended to come back to us with is they feel that there's something missing. And certainly, having been brought up in Jersey, you know, we can look back on yesteryear and with rose-tinted spectacles, but what we want to do is try and bring the best part of the past. You know, we have a unique identity with the parishes, our constitution, and we are really quite a great island. But we need to enhance what we do well and promote it. A strong identity, a strong personality in the world today is where we need to position ourselves.
So when businesses are looking to invest in Jersey and we're trying to attract businesses to come here, why are they choosing Jersey?
I think probably because we are a stable environment. We've got a very stable government, I'd like to think. We've got our taxes are stable. It's a nice environment to live and work, but obviously there are aspects of it that certainly need improving, as we've touched on earlier, like the housing. But I think we need two things. We need what's right for business, but also what's right for people to live here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's move on to education. Can the Education Minister advise what provisions and support will be available to children who are educated other than at school? Currently, the support is minimal.
So this will be around parents who choose to homeschool. So
do we have a lot of that in Jersey?
Say a lot. There is a good number of parents that choose to homeschool. They've got a committee and they get together, and I've met with them to talk about how we can better help them to homeschool. And they've given me a really, really interesting paper actually that I've been considering, and it's about also having opportunities to use things like school halls to do sports, to allow our facilities which are there to educate children in the island for homeschooling to get together and use it when it's not being used by the schools. So those are some of the things that we're considering right now. I'm looking right now at what does a new school in St Helier look like, and there's a question here also that talked about a youth centre in St Helier. So we passed a proposition that said that we cannot allocate any sites in the island that would fit a school on until we've agreed where the north and the south of St Helier schools, the new primary schools, will be. And where I'm looking at that is where will the youth centre go with that, so we can build it, and how can we make sure that the facilities are available, like building a new school for primary school that looks like the Kennervay with the new modern facilities, and then allowing youth service to use it out of hours, allowing the community to use it, and allowing homeschooling people to go and use facilities that we have, because they're there for the purpose of education. So that's what I'm looking at, what's available and what's possible at the moment in that area.
Thank you. So a question for the whole panel next. In terms of with thousands of jobs currently not being filled because many no longer pay enough to cover the rent, what career advice would the panel give to young local people? If we can keep it brief, please. Health Minister, if I can start with you.
Get as much training as you can and be prepared to be flexible. I think we're going to see as years go on that we need a workforce that can move about, be flexible, have a variety of skills. So try and build that variety of skills.
Thank you. Deputy Labby.
I think probably a piece of advice I was given was find out what you really enjoy doing, and the clever thing is to work out how you get paid to do it.
Deputy Poynton. Oh, we can't hear you.
15. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I had an experience when I was 15. I had a desire to do something, which was to become a nurse, a trained nurse, as my parents had been. And I dedicated myself to achieving that goal. And that's what I did. And I think people need to know at an early stage what it is they want to do and to pursue that goal.
Deputy Gita.
Yes, I'm a little bit puzzled by the fact that they're talking about thousands of jobs when we're probably in the hundreds, and also the fact that
well, there's 2,000 jobs in the finance industry that are currently not filled.
Okay.
And there's 1,000 on the government website, so there's 3,000.
Okay, very well.
And there's lots of jobs in hospitality that are currently not filled.
And do you think the pay is what leaves them empty?
I don't know. I think there's a variety of reasons. I think
yes,
pay is certainly
there are
part of it.
reasons.
I mean, certainly the pay in the private sector has increased 16% in the last year.
Yes, and it will continue to do so because the jobs that are needed will have to be filled.
Mm-hmm.
So it will have to go up. So I don't think this is linked at all to the career advice, which is very, very different. And the career advice is indeed to try to do something you like, but also stay in school as much as you can, so that when you come out, you have the skills that are needed.
Scott Wickenden, what's your
Can I turn
advice?
the question slightly on the head quickly as well? Because industry have to make a change with what's going on at the moment when they're looking for jobs. It's no longer good enough to say, I'm just going to give you money for the hours that you turn up here, and then just turn up and get money. Industry needs to set out pathways so that you know where you're going within that career. So it's no good enough just to say, come here and do this job and you'll get money at the end of the month. The industry needs to start enticing young people and saying, if you come and work for us, this is the pathway and this is where you can achieve within this job. So you've got something to aspire to and something to aim to. I think that's really important, that's, I don't feel, happening enough in sectors that are struggling to employ. But of course, advice for careers, Deputy Labby was absolutely right. Find something you enjoy and get somebody to pay you to do it is one thing or other. The other thing is, go and try different things. I always lived in the ethos when I did mostly vocational to get where I am, which was if I got to the point where I was literally had a month where I thought every morning before I woke up, oh, I've got to go to work. I went and found something else to do. I went and looked at what was out there and went and tried something different to see if that's what I wanted, and I went and tried and enjoyed that for a while. And that gave me so many life skills. So I would say enjoy what you do and go out and look for things that inspire you and make you want to get out of bed in the morning.
Is it as easy as that? In terms of enjoying what you do and looking for things that inspire you? Emily?
I think on an island like Jersey, it is very hard to find something that you want to do. For example, like there are certain people that want to go into industries that might be really small in Jersey, and there's a very big financial industry, but I assure you that most young people don't want to go into finance, especially if, like, because a lot of the money is in finance in Jersey, but I think that's a problem, because all the money is in finance and there's not enough money in other sectors. That's why those sectors are lacking. But you can't really tell young people to go into finance if they don't want to sit at an office for so many hours in a day. And you can't really find what you want to do if the opportunities aren't there for it.
So can I give an example of where I grew up? Like when I left school after my GCSEs, and I went and knocked on doors. I worked in insurance for a few months, didn't really like that. I went and there was a job at a locksmith, so I thought that'd be really interesting. I became a locksmith for 2.5 years, and then I went into graphic design, and I did some graphic design, and then I went into technology, and I started working in technology. So it may not be it was about, there's a job there that looks really interesting. I thought, I'm going to go and apply for that, and I'm going to go see what it's like and see if that's something I can do. It's not something that I went out of school thinking, I'm going to be a locksmith. But it really was enjoyable to go and work with the people and learn the skills that were part of it.
And in hindsight, was that okay that you were going around to different jobs, or do you think you'd have been better served by having more structure?
There was always structure. Woke up in the morning, went to work, and it gave me money to go out and with my friends. But I found that it was interesting to go out and try different things and meet different people and learn different skills, and then try something different when I wanted to.
So we've got a provocative one on Slido for you, Deputy Wickenden. When you say you were grilled by young people, which you said with the Youth Parliament earlier, this comes across as dismissive. Perhaps you need to take young people more seriously and actively listen to what they have to say. What are you going to do to make sure that you take what young people say on board?
Can I turn it to the Youth Assembly, who I said grilled me? Do you find that that word means that I wasn't listening to you, or did you feel that we had a good conversation, that you asked me lots of questions, some very tough questions, and how did you feel I responded?
I think you did a great job, really. Talking to kids is a very difficult thing. And when you said we grilled you, I mean, yeah, we did. Great, that's the whole point. Yeah. You know what I mean? Having a free country where you can talk however you like about whatever you want, it's really a great thing. And the fact that we sort of picked apart your argument, it helps you find a better argument to pursue, and that works with anything.
Do you believe that the ministers are listening to what you have to say? So it's one thing to be asking questions. Are they listening?
I would say most of them, yeah.
Any here that are not?
I like most of you, yes.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you very much. OK, back to Slido. Jersey came out of COP26 saying we would join the Paris Climate Accord. Has Jersey joined? And when will Jersey join, if they haven't already?
Jersey cannot join on its own. It can only join through the UK. So the UK, of course, is already a member, has already joined the Paris Accords. And we asked the UK to put us on the list. So it's up to them. So it's either done or being done. But we have asked to join Paris through the UK.
And is there anything that came out of COP26 that we're paying particular attention to, or we particularly want to be involved in?
We went there to present the way that we'd worked towards carbon neutrality. I did not participate, so I don't know. I didn't take anything from it myself.
Okay. Back to Slido again. I think when will we have a youth centre in town for me and my friends? We've answered that question already. What is the policy of schools about children filming each other on school grounds and posting on social media, particularly in relation to homophobia or discrimination?
So each school will have their own policies regarding this matter. There's not an overarching policy because the head teachers and the teachers know their schools and their students better than I possibly can. There is a policy against abusive behaviour towards any other student. It's part of the PSHE curriculum. And if one student is being derogatory to another student, it needs to be raised within that school to the teachers, and it needs to be dealt with appropriately. It's never acceptable.
Do you have policies like that in school? Can you verify that, Lucas?
I think that it's quite a subjective thing. It goes from school to school. Some schools are brilliant with it. They promote can't pronounce the word, diversity, there we go.
Well done.
And they're just great. There's not much hate, and if it is, it gets addressed. But other schools, on the other hand, they ignore it. I remember back when I was in year 11, someone was talking about something and just got way out of hand, and the teacher did nothing about it. I was not hate crimed, but I was discriminated for who I was. And I remember just leaving that room and being so angry, and nothing was done about that until I told, I think it was the head teacher actually. And
was it a result to your satisfaction when the head teacher knew about it?
No, it was literally me having to move classes because of something that someone else was talking about.
So do you think there's enough being done in schools to stop that kind of behaviour?
I think there could be a lot more done. There's always a lot more that could be done, but schools don't, they don't put as much emphasis on the issue as they should. I think partially because if you put too much, then maybe that's not great either.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no halfway line at the moment, and there should be.
Okay, thank you. Why are the government now concerned about tourism and hospitality when you and previous ministers have allowed it to decline and be neglected for many years? It's a little outside the remit of this panel, but I'm going to not let that stop me and go to Deputy Guida.
I'm surprised that we've let hospitality and tourism be neglected.
Do you think it has been?
I don't know. But, I don't think so. I know that this government has been quite attentive to it, and especially we tried extremely hard to save it because COVID was absolutely disastrous for the whole industry, and we certainly put a lot of effort to keep that industry going. So I think this government from the start was quite positive for the industry.
Is that a view that's shared, Deputy Wickenden?
So I would say the tourism industry in Jersey, certainly when I grew up in the 80s, was booming. One thing that we couldn't fight against was low-cost airlines that were flying to Spain, and that's probably what took most of our tourism industry away from the island back in the 80s, which was we just couldn't compete with the climate in Spain, the low-cost airlines that were flying direct from the UK, which was where most of our tourism came from, into the island, and that's where we started seeing a decline. So over successive years, we haven't been able to be a competitive force within that area, and our revenues were dropping, quite honestly. And I think that's why previous governments, and I can't really talk to them, start looking more about finance and how we can try and do things to create revenue to be able to keep the island running. And we haven't ever really got on top of the tourism in that way, because we put all previous governments have put a lot of time and energy to the finance aspect of the island and dealing with that.
Okay, we've only got time left for a couple of short questions. There are currently 81,000 tonnes of CO2 emissions difference between business as usual and Jersey's journey to net zero with interventions. It seems Government of Jersey policy is failing us and extracting from our future employment of Jersey. Does this bother you?
Well, yes, it would, but I don't recognise the figures. They're actually quite a bit different. We're starting with 400,000 tonnes of carbons as our business as usual today. That's what we produce per year. And our goal is to be carbon neutral in less than 8 years. So that's quite important. Carbon neutral means that counting what you produce and carbon credits, you are neutral. You reach zero. So we are going to make a huge effort to try to get there by 2030. After that,
how much is that going to cost us?
Well, the estimate right now is between 250 and 300 million pounds.
And where are we going to get that money from?
That's what I asked before. When of course we cannot talk forever, but the important thing about carbon neutrality and the climate crisis is that it's all down to the people. So 300 million pounds sounds absolutely crazy, but it's, and we're talking about just 2030 now. So it's only 30 million per year, and it's 1% of everybody's standard of living. So if you are ready to cut down your carbon use. Sorry, if you're ready to use 1% of your money for saving the planet, we can save the planet.
Okay,
it's not huge.
Going to go to the final question now, thank you. How does the government plan to address voting reform? The percentage vote in the previous election was 43.8%. How can the government improve this? Health Minister, I know it's slightly outside your remit, but is it one that you're willing to take?
Yes, because in the next election coming up in June, we have a different system of electing members, and I think that will generate greater interest, and I'm really hoping that it will encourage a greater diversity of candidates to stand, because instead of somebody, say in my case, being recognised in a single parish, St. One, they'll stand in a larger area. There'll be definitely an election because there'll be 4 posts, and I'm sure there'll be more than 4 people wanting to stand. And I think it won't matter whether you're known in a particular parish because the electorate is larger. And I think they'll be discussing island issues rather than perhaps particularly narrow parish issues. So that change is part of the effort to try and get the voting figures up. But it's also about people encouraging each other to vote. The youth parliament's been a great thing, and I hope you'll be encouraging all your fellow students to vote.
Can I bring Deputy Labby in on this topic as well?
Well, with the Island Identity Project, one of the objectives is to make people proud of their island, want to be proud of their island and civically engaged. And one of the things that we are doing is putting material up on the website so that our constitution and different aspects of our island can be taught in schools. People can just go to it as reference if you're new to the island. You can go on the website and see how the island works. And so we're hoping to engage more people that way.
Okay, can I, just to bring us to a close, because we're out of time this evening, I'll give you 20 seconds each, no more, to talk about your election commitments for the upcoming election. Deputy Gira, can I start with you?
Yes, you may know that I'm involved in a new party in Jersey called the Alliance Party, and to try to build up something exciting for the island for 2022 is going to be our main goal. And there are many subjects, there are many things that this government has done. I don't think it has been publicized enough, but we will tick the boxes on quite a number of projects, and I hope we can show that. But of course, there's also many of those projects that are multi-generational. In fact, this is...
Okay, I think you're out of time. Maybe another time
so much to talk about.
To go through that. Thank you very much. Deputy Poynton, your election commitments.
Well, my election commitment is to ask the so-called declared parties for their manifesto, and I will be writing to them, and I would like to look at where I might plant myself for the next election.
Deputy Labby, you've not confirmed a party yet either. Is that something that you're going to do?
I don't know. I other than Reform, I don't know what each of the parties stand for at the moment. So, and I've been in there 20 years, and I've been in as an independent. I've been quite successful with the propositions I brought forward. So I don't know. I don't know what their commitments are.
Okay. And your commitments?
My commitments, I would like to pursue in the same vein as the island identity, sort of try and make people proud of their island, have an international personality, and we certainly need a more sustainable island.
Thank you. Deputy Whittington.
The decision about standing in the next election yet. I'm still contemplating what my options and where I'm going to go forward. If I was to stand again, I would love to carry on being the Children Educations Minister and carry on through with the education reform programme, getting the intensive youth support service set up, the early intervention, the mental health services and CAMS put into an appropriate building, the funding formula for education, the retraining strategy. So I would like to carry on all the work that I'm doing, but if I was to stand again, that's the platform I would stand on.
Thank you. Health Minister?
So if I was to stand and if I was to be elected, I'd like to continue improving the health services for all islanders, and that includes building a new hospital, because that will transform our health and care services.
Thank you very much. We're out of time this evening. It just remains for me to put the date of the 14th of December in your diaries. That's when the next Ask the Minister questions are. Thank you so much to the panel this evening, Deputy Gida, Deputy Labby, Deputy Poynton, Deputy Wickenden and Deputy Renouf. And thank you in particular to our Jersey Youth Parliament for joining us today. Thank you, everybody. And for the audience at home, for all your questions. And the ministers like particularly hard questions, so if you can bear that in mind for the next time, that would be great. Thank you so much for joining us and for taking part.